folks, Dude here, coming at you on September 1st, Tuesday. Don't forget, we get the podcast later on, 9 o'clock on, of course, you know it, you love it, roundthecabin.com/campfire. Obviously, I'm wearing a gun shirt. 12 Reasons Handguns are better than women. I get a lot of looks and a lot of laughs when I wear this t-shirt from both sexes, so it's not that sexist, it's just funny. Alright, so, of course, I'm still working on the Tigger juice. And as an afterthought, we had the first video I made. Pros, cons, all the good stuff, bad stuff about the AR-15. Well, people ask me what's the good and bad points of the AK-47 family of weapons from, of course, Mr. Kalashnikov, General Kalashnikov, hero to the motherland. Awesome dude, awesome dude. So you see, the AK-47's been around for a long time. Obviously, introduced, adopted in 1947. Was an adjunct from the German MP-44, which was a medium intermediate caliber weapon system that if you squint your eyes up just a little bit, it looks a whole heck of a lot like an AK in basic iteration. The biggest difference, of course, was the German version had something referred to as a constant motion bolt. It wasn't a true, basically bolt carrier with a bolt that went in and turned, and of course had the bolt carrier kind of, it was different in one aspect. The biggest difference between those two systems was essentially that the German version, the bolt was always in motion. It was either traveling back, the bolt carrier was always in motion, and it was always on spring tension, backwards and forwards. It made the weapon very, very smooth to shoot full automatic. And of course it was shooting an intermediate caliber cartridge. It was an 8mm cartridge, so same thing as the 8mm Mauser, but it was a 33mm case. Now, does that sound more than just slightly similar to the Russian version of 7.62 by 3.9? Well, yeah, because 8mm would be 7.92 by 3.3. Just a skosh bigger, like 36 caliber, 35 caliber, something like that. Very close, but the Germans wanted to keep the same basic methodology of making gun barrels. They wanted to stick with 8mm. 8mm versus 7.62, 30 caliber versus, 8mm caliber, 35, 36 caliber. It's kind of, basically pulling hairs. But essentially the biggest problems and good parts about the AK is, number one, the AK is full-on reliable with the worst, absolute worst of care. Rich Beresford and I, of course, on Around the Cabin, we go back and forth about, which weapon system's better. He adores the AK. I am totally full-on and into the AR family of weapon systems. So much so that I actually said, you know what, I probably should have something that shoots Russian. I didn't get an AK. I got an upper that's 7.62 by 3.9. But I'm ready to shoot the Rusky stuff. It's going to be around. So anyway, the case in point is essentially the best parts and the worst parts of the AK system. Full-on reliability, worst to care. The best story I ever heard, this guy basically was doing maintenance on his AK-47. What's he do? Breaks it down, sloshes it in a puddle. Well, it comes time to clean out the rifle bore. Does he have a bore snake? Does he have a rifle brush and, a rod? No. Dude pulls the shoelace off his boot, ties a bunch of knots, runs that through the bore, and pulls that out 3 or 4 times, and that cleaned, quote-unquote, cleaned the gun. Then what did he do to lube it up? He basically probably walked over to a car, yanked up the dipstick, and went bloop, 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 bloop. Dipped it in a few more times, got some motor oil on there, and he was good to go, ready to launch. That's the kind of stuff you can do to an AK, and it'll still keep working. The magazines are damn nigh indestructible. They are so overbuilt, they're built for the Russian Cossacks to take in bouncing snow, drive over tanks. Maybe not that far, but, they are really exceedingly tough, overbuilt, completely ridiculously strong magazine. Druthers. Let's go from magazine on up. The magazine catch on an AK-47, even practiced up, is a two-handed operation. Unless you're one of those really seriously amazing Polish dudes like I saw. Dude basically took his AK, flicked the first magazine into the second magazine, flicked the rifle up, snapped the magazine in, snapped the rifle down, and at the same time he was snapping it down, racked the bolt. So literally dude's magazine change was chick-chack. He was literally snapping a magazine change about as fast as somebody doing an AR. If not faster. The guy was flipping phenomenal. He's like Polish Special Forces, and he was just amazing to behold. Now, that is something that can be a pain in the ass. I have an M14/M1A. Same basic rifle, system for magazine lockup. You take a magazine, you stick it in the front of the well, you rock it back. That's how it locks up. 2 points of contact. Not like an AR where you run it up in the well and there's like one lock. Basically, that's, two different ways of thinking. So that, I would say, is actually a good thing, but a bad thing. The magazine catch on an AK is a pain in the ass because you need one hand to drop the magazine out. You need another hand to stick the new magazine in. Unless you're practice up and you flick the thing down. But even then, you can break the bolt. The magazine catch. You can do all kinds of stupid things, getting tangled up in the way. Tacky psyche. Everything tends to go to crap. All your reflexes are completely shot to hell. All that stuff comes into play. The magazines are not light either. They are steel, man. They are not light. Fully loaded AK magazine is about a pound and change a piece. They are tanks. Also, the round is not light. 760 by 3.9 versus 5.56 by, 5.56 by 4.5. So the cartridge itself is at least a third to half again as heavy as 5.56. The caliber designation itself, the bullet makes most of its damage by punching a hole straight on through. It takes a long time for an AK bullet to upset and start flipping around the target. 5.56, it kind of goes in and goes pop. Not with an AK. AK basically punches a hole. About the same thing as like a 38 Super. Now, also, the weapon system itself, the triggers usually suck. The safeties are loud, clunky, and obnoxious, and it's very easy to flick that safety from semi to full, or full to semi. When you mean to go simply one mode to the other, it is very easy to get those two things completely back-asswards. Ergonomically, the sights on an AK suck. They are basically combat sights. You have a slot, you have a post, you're trying to align all three. The ergonomics are not good. The stocks are way, way short, man. They were built for tanker crews, okay? The AK-47 was built for people to come popping out of the tank and fight. Okay, most time you're in a tank, you're fighting with a tank. You're not fighting with your rifle. The only time you're fighting with your rifle is when your tank goes south. If you're driving a Russian tank, that happens quite a bit. Russian tanks, when they work great. When they don't work, which is a lot of the time, they don't work good, and you're coming out fighting with your AK. That's why they made them short. That's not so much the way that it works for us. We basically issue our guys some machine guns, by and large, and pistols in our tanks, because we know they're not popping out real often. When they do, things have gone really, really bad, and they need to get out fast. Okay, the other thing, too, about the AK is essentially, if it is a folding stock, the underfolder stock, I cannot tell you how unbelievably uncomfortable that stock is to fire. Literally, that stock is two pieces of metal that come back. There's a piece of metal that is shaped like a U. That piece of metal shaped like a U folds down, that makes the buttstock. Well, literally, you're shooting something that looks like a horseshoe on your shoulder. So it's got two sharp ends sticking up and a loop underneath. That is your buttstock, okay? The angle on it sucks, okay? You will not get a good cheek weld. Most time you're going to be shooting that thing, you're going to be floating your face, trying to find zero, and you're going to have a wandering zero because everything's going to be kabobbled. Yeah. The side folders on those things do work. It is a very good side folder. The Bulgarian side folders, for instance, are an amazingly good system. But yet again, it is really hard to get a cheek weld. Me, because I'm German, Hungarian, Irish, and English, I have a mix and I have a big face. I can make it work. I have very strange cheekbones, very large jaw. It works for me. I'm built like a Cossack. But for the average person with a fairly slim face, you will not get a good cheek weld. You are going to be probably chin welding to shoot that thing accurately. Other components therein. Basically, when you shoot an AR-15, most of the gas is basically going out the muzzle. Just enough gas is functioning the bolt system. On an AK, you have a poof. You have this big bolt carrier that's then pushing back. If you've ever seen an AK-47 being fired on fully automatic in ultimate slow motion, you see the weapon fire, you see the barrel whip, you see the gun torque and whip. It looks like a snake having sex with itself as this thing is firing. It is one of the most flexible, flexy, sloppy shooting harmonic weapons on planet Earth. It literally looks like somebody has just taken a piece of wire and they're snapping it with one end fixed, and you're seeing the undulating waves as this thing is firing. I cannot tell you how much these things move around when they're shooting. It is very, very, very hard to make an AK-47 shoot with great accuracy. At best, you will probably have a shotgun pattern at 200 meters, which is pretty much about the theoretical effectiveness of the 7.62 by 3.9. Simply because the ammo is loaded for extreme reliability, it is not loaded for accuracy. So, case in point, it's basically it's the world's left arm, I guess you could say, as opposed to the world's right arm, which would be the FNFAL. It would be the world's left arm. Everybody and their brother's cousin has got the AK-47. There's about 50 bazillion variants out there. There's about 50 bazillion different kinds of variants out there. There's AK-47s all over planet Earth. It is the most prevalent weapon system you will ever encounter on any country on planet Earth. That said, I could shoot an AK. I could utilize an AK. I know how an AK works. I could take the thing apart, put it back together, all the rest of that good stuff like that there. I know how an AK functions. I've fired AKs. I don't particularly like AKs. I can use an AK. Would I prefer to have an AK? Me personally, no. But an AK-47 in 5.56 would be intriguing. I mean, basically you had them, the Israelis had the Galil. There is a South African version. I believe it was known as the R4 or R5. I forget which one it is. There is, of course, European versions. There is definitely other Russian versions made in 5.56. That's kind of getting a little bit closer to the mark for me. But even the Russians realized that the large caliber does not do it as good as a smaller caliber. So in 1974, they made the AK-74, which then became 5.45-3.9. The beauty about that one is same basic magazine, same basic rifle, same basic everything with only a couple of minor slight redesigns. I think they tweaked the feed lips just a little bit on the magazine, and of course they had to make a smaller bore and probably tweak the gas system just a little bit. Now, comparatively between these two calibers of 5.56 45 by 5.45 3.9, basically the Russian 223, ballistically they're very, very close, with one major difference. From its outset, the Russians have made the 5.45 with a steel core, not as a penetrator, because if you look at the thing, it basically looks like two blunt ends on a dumbbell that's inside the cartridge, a little bit of lead in front, then of course you have that steel bar taking up the majority of the cartridge. Now what that actually does is when the round goes in, the lead goes one way, the steel goes the other way, and it just kind of goes in and goes pop. They literally refer to this thing as the poison bullet. It is a very, very effective anti-personnel round from its very, very outset. The bullet weight is very close to the M193 ball 55 grain projectile that we have used. I don't remember the exact weight off the top of my head. I'll put it down in the annotations. But the Russian 5.45 by 3.9 was a very, and is a very effective round for that first couple hundred meters, which is pretty much where most of your maximum engagements are taking place. So 7.62 by 3.9, it has a lot of recoil, it's heavy, and it doesn't do anything the way that it was intended to do after they had a realization that smaller calibers for anti-personnel is better. Because most of the time you're in combat, you're hosing rounds, you are hitting a lot of air. So carrying a lot more ammo that is more effective when you finally do connect makes sense. On that one, folks, I'm going to break off and say this is the pros and cons of the AK-47 system. I still prefer the AR, but you know what? Either one of these weapons will save your bacon in the worst of times when the zombie apocalypse happens. TOT-walkie, world without rule of law, all the rest of those goofy things, SHTF, all that goofy stuff. Either of these weapon systems will save your bacon and keep you running and gunning. I'm going to break up all this one, folks. Eco Captain Ring is always, you know it, you love it. AK-47 versus AR goodness. Still liking my AR, but the AK does work. See you guys.